Hey, this is a video on how to calibrate your, just a walkthrough actually, a temperature gauge on a Mark 1 Stag. Now I'm under the impression all the temperature gauges, if you get a Mark 2, they're sort of in this direction from the meter reading up, but the Stag Mark 1 has it on the bottom. And sometimes people say, well, my temperature gauge isn't right, or my fuel gauge. No, the gauge is basically the same. So this is a Mark 1 gauge. I actually calibrated it a couple of years ago, and on my Stag I actually put a mechanical temperature gauge in, but that failed. It's the second one that failed, so I'm going to go back to a mechanical temperature gauge, and that's the one that's going in. But I had a gauge that had some issues, and I actually needed the glass for my clock, and I have a Mark 1 clock that's working. So what you do is relatively, it's not too difficult, I would say, is if you look very carefully on the gauge, there are little dots. You can see some right in the center, right underneath H. There's two dots there, and there should be another one under C. Actually, this is the one that's been taken apart. You can probably see it a lot more clearly. There's two dots just by C, two dots by H, and two dots right in the middle. Now what you do is there are actually adjustment screws. You actually apply voltages to the various points. I think it's 2, 4 point something, 8 and 7. I'm not 100% sure, but I'll post it in my video in the description. And what you do, you connect it to a variable power supply, and at the back there are two adjustments. So you can get either a special tool, or I have figured out if I just, some people post a special tool that's, you know, get a bolt and just machine out a little notch in it, and there's some on the web. But what I found out is you really don't need that. If you use a tool like this, scribe, you can actually adjust the adjustments on the back. So as I said, there's two adjustments, one for high, one for low. Now they're not independent, because what I found out is that here's one that I had taken apart. In fact, this one actually got stuck. One of the gizmos, the adjustment gizmos, got stuck. But if you can see, what happens is they move. So unfortunately, I'm again using one hand on my phone, but if you just put this here, you can see there's a gap sort of here. You can actually move this back and forward slightly, and what that does, it moves the needle. Now what I found out just today, I didn't know, this is my first time I pulled a unit apart, the two adjustments are not independent to each other. So if you adjust one, and you may have to retweak, readjust the other. And so what happens, I don't think, I just oiled it because one of them had got stuck, but if I move this slightly, you'll see that the needle moved. So what you do is, if you want to get the setting correct at the bottom, on C, you adjust one or the other. There you go. You can see that I'm moving it. As I move this, it's moving the needle up and down. But as I said, they're both connected to each other somehow through this mechanism. So if you adjust one, you'll definitely have to adjust the other. So I did calibrate some other gauges where sort of it was guesstimated, because some of the adjustments didn't work perfectly, but they were close enough. So I actually had an issue with my fuel gauge, which is more or less the same. The only difference is basically the bezel that you put on top. Well, not the bezel, this plate you put on top has temperature, on the other one it says fuel. I suppose while you're at it, you can clean these out, which I'll do. But I just wanted to make a little video on how you actually calibrate them. And again, I'll post the voltages that you apply at, there's 3 voltages. I think one's at 2, one's at 4, and as mentioned, you adjust them so the gauge points onto these two needles, these two dots for one, these two dots. From what I remember when I did it last time, you get hot and cold, and the center one's sort of okay. But as I said, you've got to adjust both of them. So you may have to tweak it a few times just to get the adjustments that you want. So this is the temperature, the inside of it. I'm probably going to clean it up. I don't know why they were blue. Maybe if they put them white, it would reflect more. But in my one, I'm going to put an LED in there, so it's not a big issue. But anyway, this is what the guts of the temperature gauge looks like. And this is, and what I'm going to do is put this back and adjust it later on at another time. Relatively easy to put together, nothing to worry about too much. I suppose you want to be careful of this when you pull this out. You don't want to bend the needle. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. The twisting off these top metal bezels, there's a little thing you can get, a little screwdriver, bend the tab, not too much, and then rotate it so it lines up, and then you can remove it. So that's just a little short video on temperature gauges. And again, you can do this, the voltage gauge works the same way, and I'm assuming the Mark II Stag's gauges, they're basically the same system, but you know, the needle on those are pointing upright.